Some machines are built. These were forged. In the 1970s, engineers didn't design a bulldozer to last 5 years. They designed it to outlive the man operating it. Steel an inch thick, engines with no computers to fail, machines that got buried in mudslides, dropped from barges, abandoned in jungles, and started on the first crank 20 years later. 10 of them refused to die. And number 1 is still pushing dirt somewhere in the world right now. Number 10. Caterpillar D6D. We start with the machine that probably built your town. Not a superdozer, not a record breaker. The Caterpillar D6D was a 140 horsepower mid-size tractor, the model that sat right in the middle of Caterpillar's 1970s lineup between the little D5B and the bigger D7G. In an era when every manufacturer was chasing horsepower headlines, Cat quietly kept building the machine that contractors actually bought by the thousand. And here's why it belongs on this list. The D6D didn't have a single fashionable idea in it. No elevated sprocket, no electronics, no hydrostatic wizardry. It had a straightforward oval track undercarriage, a mechanical direct injection diesel, a power shift transmission, and a seat. That's it. And that plainness is exactly what made it immortal. There is almost nothing on a D6D that a competent mechanic in a field with a socket set and a welder cannot fix. Ask any old land clearing outfit in the American South, any logging contractor in British Columbia, any farmer in Punjab or Queensland, and you'll hear the same sentence in different accents. That old D6 just doesn't stop. Where a modern dozer throws a fault code and refuses to move until a technician plugs in a laptop. A D6D from 1978 has no opinion about anything. It doesn't know what a sensor is. If it has fuel, air, and compression, it works. If it's low on hydraulic oil, it works badly, but it works. That is the entire difference between 1970s iron and modern iron. Thousands are still in service. Not in museums, in service. Pushing silage, clearing scrub, building farm dams. 50 years on, running parts that were machined before most of the people watching this video were born. The D6D is number 10. Not because it was the toughest, but because it was the most ordinary machine on this list, and it still refuses to die. When the ordinary machines are this stubborn, imagine what the big ones were like. Let's find out. Number 9. Terex 8250. In 1973, General Motors decided to punch Caterpillar in the mouth. The result was the Terex 8250. And if you have never heard a Detroit diesel 12V71 turbo screaming under load, you have not lived. This was a 12-cylinder, 2-stroke GM diesel producing 370 flywheel horsepower, mounted in a dozer that weighed around 48 tons, fully equipped with a semi-U blade and a 3-shank ripper. It was designed with one target, the Caterpillar D9. The 8250 went into production at Terex's Hudson, Ohio plant in August 1973, and it did something almost no other machine in this era managed. It survived corporate chaos. Think about what happened to Terex in the years after. The collapse of the 1970s construction boom, the brutal early 1980s recession, the disastrous sale of the Terex division to the German IBH group in the early 1980s, IBH's collapse, and the business bouncing back to GM. Product lines were killed, factories closed, dealers vanished, and the 8250 just kept getting built. Right through all of it, production ran continuously from 1973 into early 1986, over 12 years. For the last stretch of its life, it was even renamed the D800 to fit a new corporate naming scheme. But the operators weren't fooled. It was still an 8250 underneath. What made it so stubborn? Design honesty. Terex put the radiator at the back of the machine, away from the blade, away from the dust, away from flying rock. The final drives were heavy planetary units. The transmission was an Allison-proven, rebuildable, and understood by every truck shop in North America. And that 2-stroke Detroit is a machine with a personality disorder. It's loud enough to be a workplace hazard. It smokes like a coal fire. It drinks fuel. But you can rebuild one in a shed, and it will run on almost anything you feed it at any angle, in any temperature. The 8250 was never the best-selling big dozer. It didn't need to be. The ones that got built simply refused to stop long after the company that made them had been sold, dismantled, renamed, and sold again. Number 8. International Harvester TD25C. Here is a machine that outlived its own company twice. The International Harvester TD25C was IH's heavyweight answer to the Caterpillar D8, and it was a serious piece of iron. Power came from an International DTI 817 6-cylinder turbocharged, intercooled diesel 13.4 liters, rated at 285 flywheel horsepower in the C model, fully equipped with blade and ripper. Owners routinely report scale tickets around 80,000 pounds. It ran a twin-disc type power shift with a 2-speed range and 2-speed steering, and it rode on 7 bottom rollers aside on massive track frames. Operators who ran them will tell you 2 things. First, the 2-speed steering made a 40-ton machine feel almost nimble under full load. Second, it was a tank, but that's not why it's here. The TD25C is here because of what happened after International Harvester stopped making it. IH's construction division was sold to Dresser Industries, and Dresser kept building TD25s. Then Komatsu took a major stake in Dresser in the late 1980s, and the TD25 line survived that too. Then in the 2000s, the design was sold on again to HSW Industries in Poland, and the TD25 still kept being manufactured on a different continent under a different flag by a company most Americans have never heard of. Sit with that for a second. A dozer designed by International Harvester engineers in the 1960s and refined through the 1970s was still rolling out of a factory decades later, after the brand that created it had been carved up and sold for parts. The company died. The machine didn't. And out in the field, the surviving TD25Cs are exactly as difficult and exactly as unkillable as their reputation suggests. Yes, parts are getting genuinely hard to find. Yes, the fuel burn in a quarry is eye-watering. Operators report running through well over 100 gallons in a hard shift of pushing and ripping. Nobody who owns one is pretending it's efficient. But when a 50-year-old TD25C lights off and buries a ripper shank into shot rock, you understand what the engineers in Melrose Park were building for. They weren't building a product cycle. They were building a tool, and they built it far, far heavier than they needed to. Number 7. Komatsu D155A. By the mid-1970s, Western manufacturers had a problem, and its name was Komatsu. The D155A was Komatsu's 300 horsepower class heavy dozer, aimed squarely at the segment held by the Caterpillar D8 and the International TD25C, and it did something that genuinely alarmed Peoria and Chicago. It worked. It didn't just work. It worked well, it worked cheap, and it worked for years. Contractors who bought a D155A expecting a disposable Japanese knockoff got a very unpleasant surprise. Komatsu had built its heavy dozers around a simple philosophy: take proven, conservative mechanical engineering, execute it with obsessive manufacturing precision, and price it below the American competition. Wet-type steering clutches and brakes instead of dry ones for longer service life. Heavy 2-stage final drives, direct injection diesels tuned for torque, not headline horsepower. The results spoke on the job site. The machines held their tune. They didn't leak. The undercarriages went the distance. But the real proof of the D155A's toughness isn't in a 1970s spec sheet. It's in a 2020s Komatsu catalog, because the D155 is still here. The D155X, the direct descendant of that 1970s machine, remained one of Komatsu's core heavy dozers for decade after decade. The name didn't change, the model number didn't change. The basic architecture that Komatsu got right in the 1970s just kept getting refined, sold, and shipped generation after generation for over 40 years. That is the ultimate compliment you can pay a design. Not it lasted a long time, but we never found a reason to replace it. And the original 1970s D155As. They went where the hard work was: iron ore in Australia, coal in Indonesia, road building across Asia, quarries in the Middle East. They got beaten to death in the harshest, hottest, dustiest environments on the planet by operators who had no dealer support within 500 miles, and they kept coming back for more. That's how a Japanese newcomer became a giant, one stubborn, unbreakable bulldozer at a time. Number 6. Caterpillar D8. If the D9 was the king, the D8 was the army. The Caterpillar D8K arrived in the mid-1970s, carrying 300 horsepower and Caterpillar's D342 diesel sitting right below the mighty D9H in Cat's lineup. And for an enormous number of contractors, the D8K wasn't a compromise between a D7 and a D9. It was simply the correct machine for almost everything: highway building, dam construction, landfill work, push-loading scrapers, land clearing, mine site prep. If a job was too big for a D7 and didn't justify the fuel bill and float cost of a D9, you sent a D8K. It was, for maybe 15 years, the single most useful large dozer on Earth. Here is what people who've never run one don't understand about the D8K. This machine was built with a margin. Caterpillar didn't design the D8K to survive its rated load. They designed it to survive its rated load being abused, doubled, ignored, and applied by a tired operator on a Friday afternoon in the rain. Frames, final drives, roller frames, pins, bushings, all of it was specified with a surplus of steel that no modern accountant would ever approve. That surplus is exactly why so many are still alive, and they are still alive. Go to any machinery auction in the United States, Australia, India, Africa, or South America, and you will find D8Ks, not restored showpieces, working machines with 20,000 hours on the clock, a rebuilt engine or two behind them, mismatched paint, cracked glass, and a full day's work still in them. The economics are brutal in the D8K's favor. A modern equivalent costs more than a house. A running D8K costs what a used pickup truck costs, and the D8K will move dirt all day without a single line of software between the operator's hands and the blade. It was never the flashiest. It never broke a record. It just showed up every single morning for 50 years and did the work, which, if we're being honest, is the only definition of toughness that has ever mattered. Number 5. Allis-Chalmers HD41. Now we get to the monsters, and this one has a story. In 1970, Allis-Chalmers rolled out the HD41, and it was, at that moment, the largest crawler tractor in the world. Bigger than anything Caterpillar had. Bigger than anything anyone had. The numbers are still startling. A Cummins VT17 10C turbocharged V12 diesel, 1,710 cubic inches of displacement, rated at 524 flywheel horsepower, a 3-speed power-shift transmission supplied by twin-disc, bulldozer blades up to 20 feet wide. Bare, it was around 46 tons, loaded up with a ROP S, a semi-U blade, and a CRC Kelly single-shank ripper. One of these could top 65 to 70 tons. To put that in perspective, at the time, Caterpillar's biggest machine, the D9G, made 410 horsepower. The HD41 had 114 more horsepower than the King of the Mountain, and this machine had been a long time coming. Allis-Chalmers had actually shown an HD41 prototype back at the 1963 Chicago Road Show, but they held it back for years, running prototype after prototype in the field, because the engines, the metallurgy, and the manufacturing technology to build a machine this large simply didn't exist yet. They waited until 1970 to put it into full production. When it landed, it worked. Operators reported the HD41 could rip traveling uphill, something the D9G simply could not do, and it could flat out outproduce anything Caterpillar had on the lot. But here's the honest part, and it's the part that makes this machine legendary rather than perfect. The HD41 was, in the words of the men who ran them, built a little too light for the power it made. It ate final drives in heavy rock work. Some fleets in Australia actually detuned their machines by 80 to 100 horsepower just to stop them from tearing themselves apart. Think about what that means. This dozer had so much power, so much raw aggression, that owners had to reach in and turn it down, because the machine would not back off on its own. It genuinely did not know how to quit. It would keep pushing until something broke, and the thing that broke was never the operator's nerve. Fiat took control of Allis-Chalmers construction division in 1974. The HD41 became the Fiat Allis 41B, and the line finally ended in 1982 after roughly 3,000 machines. Allis-Chalmers started the giant dozer race and was the first to walk away from it. But for a few years in the early 1970s, the biggest, angriest bulldozer on planet Earth was orange. Number 4. Komatsu D355A. While America was fighting over who had the biggest dozer, Komatsu was doing something smarter, building a big dozer for the worst job on Earth and letting the results do the talking. The D355A was developed as Komatsu's heavy machine for overseas mining work. A 410 horsepower class crawler in the same weight bracket as Caterpillar's D9, running at roughly 100,000 pounds in operating weight. And Komatsu made a very deliberate choice about where to prove it. They sent the first export unit to the Hamersley iron ore operations in Western Australia. If you wanted to design a test that would destroy a bulldozer, you could not do better. Hamersley is heat, dust, and abrasive iron ore so dense it grinds steel like a file. It is one of the most punishing environments any earth-moving machine has ever been asked to work in. Undercarriages don't wear there, they get consumed. And ripping in that material puts loads through a machine's final drives and frame that a normal construction site never approaches. Komatsu sent their new flagship straight into it. The D355A came out of that trial with a reputation that money cannot buy. Big, heavy ripper mounted at the rear, a Toraflow-type torque converter drive, wet steering clutches and brakes, high tensile steel in the mold board and backplate, two-stage final drives to get the power down without shredding themselves. All of it wrapped in a machine designed from day one to be worked to death in remote locations thousands of kilometers from the nearest dealer. And that's the entire point. The D355A wasn't built for a well-supported job site in Illinois. It was built for the middle of nowhere, where call the technician is not an option, and the machine has to fix itself, survive itself, or the mine loses a shift. That's the philosophy that put Komatsu on the map and kept the D355A working in mines, quarries, and reclamation projects around the world for decades. It was the machine that proved a Japanese manufacturer could not just compete with the Americans in the heavy class, but could beat them at the one thing Americans thought they owned outright: durability. Number 3. Komatsu D455A. And then Komatsu built a monster. The D455A was Japan's superdozer, and it took Komatsu's engineers over 5 years to develop. The first problem was almost comical. Komatsu didn't build an engine big enough. Nothing in their catalog could move a machine this size. So they went to Cummins, their long-standing partner, and Cummins handed them a turbocharged V12, the VTA 1710, putting out 620 flywheel horsepower. Then Komatsu did something genuinely unusual, and it's the reason this machine belongs on a list about refusing to quit. Instead of feeding all that power through one gigantic torque converter and one gigantic transmission, a single point of failure carrying 620 horsepower, they built a split power system, 2 torque converters, 2 4-speed power shift transmissions, power divided and delivered to the tracks through a center clutch. That is an engineer looking at a colossal machine and asking what happens when this thing hits something immovable and won't back down, and answering it by splitting the load in half. The size was absurd for the era. Bare, roughly 58 tons, fully equipped with a U-blade and that enormous rear ripper, over 90 tons. Blade options ran to a 20-foot full U. Komatsu built what they called a giant ripper for the back, a single shank unit whose tip velocity, by Komatsu's own account, approached that of dynamite. That was the sales pitch: don't blast, just rip. The D455A took the world's largest dozer crown in the mid-1970s, before Caterpillar's D10 arrived. Some contemporary sources put its introduction as early as 1974, others as 1975 or 1976, but the impact is not in dispute. Komatsu exported them from Japan all over the world, and a huge number ended up in the hardest work available: coal, iron ore, and reclamation, including a large contingent that went into Russian mines. In the 1980s, Komatsu bumped the engine to 650 horsepower and redesigned the cab and RLPS. And even after the far more modern D455A arrived, Komatsu kept building the D455A right through to 1987 because customers kept buying it. They didn't want the new one, they wanted the one that wouldn't break. That's the whole video right there, in one purchasing decision. Number 2. Caterpillar D10. In the fall of 1977, Caterpillar uncorked the D10, and the bulldozer was never the same again. The context matters. Cat was losing. Allis-Chalmers had 524 horsepower on the table. Komatsu had 620. Caterpillar's best was the D9H at 410. For the first time in the company's history, Caterpillar did not build the biggest dozer in the world, and it stung. So Cat didn't just build a bigger D9, they tore up the fundamental layout of the crawler tractor. The TEM introduced the elevated drive sprocket, the high drive triangular undercarriage that is now so iconic you can identify a Cat dozer from a mile away in silhouette. And this wasn't styling. It was a solution to the single biggest killer of big dozers, shock loads. On a conventional dozer, the drive sprocket sits down in the dirt, in the rocks, in the mud, and every impact the tracks take travels straight into the final drives and the powertrain. Cat lifted the sprocket up out of the ground entirely. Now the final drives and steering clutches were isolated from ground shock, up out of the muck, easier to service and dramatically longer lived. The oscillating undercarriage kept more track on the ground on rough terrain. The operator's station got quieter and smoother. The numbers were finally back on top too. 700 horsepower from Cat's D358 twin-turbocharged V12, an engine already proven in the 777 hauler and the 992 wheel loader. Weight around 180,000 pounds, later versions closer to 190,000. It could swing a 19-foot U-blade 7 feet tall, moving a claimed 35 cubic yards a pass. The development was ruthless. The first pilot machine was shown internally in 1973. More prototypes followed in 1975 and 1977, with 10 pre-production machines shipped out to real job sites to be flogged. Between 1978 and 1986, nearly 1,000 D10s were built at East Peoria, outselling the Fiat Alice and Komatsu competition combined. But the real proof of the D10 is this. Nearly 50 years later, every large Caterpillar dozer on the planet still uses the elevated sprocket, the D11, the D10T, all of it. Cat solved the problem so completely in 1977 that nobody, including Cat, has found a reason to go back. The D10 didn't just refuse to quit. It made every dozer that followed it harder to kill. Number 1. Caterpillar D9H. And at number 1, there was only ever going to be one machine, the Caterpillar D9H. 410 horsepower. The flagship of Caterpillar's lineup through the second half of the 1970s, sitting above the D8K's 300 horsepower and below only the new D10. On paper, that's not a monster. The HD41 had more power. The D455A had way more power. The D10 that replaced it had 700. So why is the D9H number 1? Because the D9 is the most trusted bulldozer ever built. Full stop. Ask a contractor with 40 years in the dirt what machine they'd take to a job in the middle of nowhere, with no dealer, no support, and no second chances, and a huge number of them will say a D9. It is the machine that built dams, cut highways through mountains, stripped mines, cleared jungle, pushed scrapers, and did it on 6 continents in every climate humans work in. It has been armored and sent into war zones. It has been drowned, buried, rolled, burned, and dug back out and put back to work. The D9H specifically was the last of the old-school 9 conventional undercarriage, mechanical everything, a machine you could pull apart and understand. And Cat, to their enormous credit, never pretended it was flawless. Some D9Hs chewed through final drives when worked hard. But here's the difference between Caterpillar and everyone else in this era. They fixed it, they supported it, and they kept the parts flowing for decades. That's the real secret. The D9's immortality isn't only steel, it's the ecosystem. There is not a corner of this planet where you cannot find a D9 part, a D9 mechanic, a D9 manual, and 3 men who have run one. And the machine earned that. The D9 will push until the blade stalls, then downshift and push again. It will rip rock that other machines need explosives for. It will run at 15, 20, 30,000 hours through rebuild after rebuild. 50 years after the last D9H rolled out of East Peoria, they are still working, not as curiosities, but as equipment, on real job sites, earning real money. Somewhere in the world right now, at this exact moment, a 1970s D9 is pushing dirt. It doesn't know it's supposed to be retired. Nobody's told it. And frankly, nobody's got the nerve. And if you've ever run one of these, I want to hear the story. Because half of what we know about these machines only exists because operators like you remember it. Subscribe if you want more of this. There's a lot more old iron out there that never learned how to quit.